All right, so if there's anyone in the audience that would like to ask their question, please raise your hand. All right.
I'm told I need to stand up, right? My name is George White, and I'm a parent-student advocate with Michigan United, as well as the executive director of Sea Change. I received in the mail today a copy of the Excelsior, and what it says here is that district graduation rates climb. District programs should help fuel continued growth. I believe the growth is quoted at 75.2%, which is slightly below the 8% state rate. I also received in the mail a communication from Clark Hill, which are the Kalamazoo Public School attorneys. They refer to Alternative Learning Program, which is a middle school, as a program, not a school. Innovative Learning Program is considered to be a school, but it does have the last word is being program. Phoenix is considered on the paperwork to be an alternative school. All students from these schools are referred to those schools at the discretion of the principals. So therefore, if you send all of those kids to those schools, and those schools are failing, wouldn't that increase the growth rate, the graduation percentage rate in those other schools?
Is that your question?
Yeah.
Can you read your tail end of that? What's your question?
My question is, if you refer these schools, these students to these other schools, and those schools are failing, would that not artificially raise the rates in the primary schools to be Kalamazoo Central and Illinois?
Are you directing that at a trustee or is that an open question?
Anyone can answer.
All right, I'm going to try.
Actually, Trustee Gershak, I'd like for you to start that, please.
Well, my understanding is that that's not the case. You know, the graduation rates are computed, computed against all of the students that are coming through the school. So, I guess I'm having trouble understanding, the exact nature of your question. Are you suggesting that the students who go to Phoenix aren't included in the graduation rates?
According to, when I went on the website for the Michigan Department of Education, there was no information whatsoever in terms of Phoenix, Alternative Learning Program, as well as Innovative Learning Program. In this document right here, it says that the state is not required, that the schools are not required to report to the state those numbers. So if they're not required to report to the state those numbers.
The metrics are done for the entire district. So just because we're by schools doesn't mean that we are excluding. Just because schools have names, but it's a lump sum and it's done by the state. Our graduation rate is not computed by us. We turn in all the information to the state, everything we've got, and then that's why they come out so late. We should be able to give it to you the day after graduation. We can't. It comes from the state. The official thing comes from the state, and all numbers go into the state. It's audited, it's verified, and re-verified. All those numbers are
Thank you, Trustee Scholler-Barber. Trustee Moore, I'd like to weigh in on that for 30 seconds to respond.
Like Ms. Scholler-Barber said, the way that the graduation rates are calculated, it depends on the state. That's why it takes a while for us to get our official graduation rate in. Even if a student leaves our district, as I understand it, that student is tracked and they count toward our graduation rates. So to answer your question about whether or not the placement of students would, artificially inflate or otherwise affect our rate, that is not true, as I understand it.
Thank you. Is there another community member who'd like to ask a question? Then we'll get you next. Yes, Santiago.
Good evening. In the next 6 to 8 years, African Americans and Latinos will be the electoral majority.
Can you speak up, Santiago?
In the next 6 to 8 years, African Americans and Latinos will be the electoral majority in this country. In the next 9 years, 50% of the present-day jobs will be replaced by technology and by robotics. In the next 12 to 15 years, African Americans Americans and Latinos will be the demographic majority in this country at the same time that English becomes a minority language in the United States. And about that time, the United States is going to run out of petroleum. What kind of curriculum are you encouraging the administrative authorities in KPS to prepare now so that in the next 10 to 20 years, the students are ready for a reality that's going to change more dramatically than this country has changed in the last 200 years of white settler colonialism?
Wow.
I'm bursting.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm bursting.
Showbarber, Trustee Showbarber,
Do I
yes.
have a, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
You have 30
great,
seconds.
beautiful question. I will start with an AP in our high schools. The Latinos and the African Americans, we are doing magnificent work in encouraging the exposure to AP literature. That's one. We are encouraging very much from the get-go, all-day kindergarten, such that when they get all the way through, that they have oh my God, 30 seconds is nothing. Anyway, we are on it and we are believing in it and we understand the statistics that you've given and we've got specific programs that we're doing and I could give you the metrics, but I'm out of time.
All right, is it agreeable? Do we think 30 seconds is long enough? Do we need to extend it a little bit? Do we do like a minute, 45 seconds, a minute?
90 seconds.
So are we looking at 45 seconds or a minute?
45.
Okay, so from here on out,
Not even.
Said 45.
Get 3 more seconds.
you can get 30 more seconds. You said
Here's my heart. We have El Sol, a whole elementary school that's dual language. We are very much with the idea of STEM. We are encouraging very much. In each of these areas, we have some cultural things we have to help out with. Thank you. We have some cultural areas that we have to help out with, but it is very much in our purview to make sure that these students you're speaking of are well equipped and are in the mainstream. And again, my best example and my most current thing is I think that the Latino enrollment rate in AP courses has gone up in the thousands of percent in the last 10 years. And
thank you, Trustee Showbarber.
we teach Chinese too.
Yes, Trustee Moore.
I really appreciate that question, actually. So what are we doing and what are we doing to encourage our administration? Currently, and just at our last board meeting, there was an announcement of an expansion of our robotics program for middle schools. Not all of them, unfortunately, but our 4 comprehensive middle schools now have access to robotics equipment to start that. We have new board members. I'm one of them. A couple in particular, one who is not here tonight is particularly passionate about career and technical education, which is something that we're all talking about, and something that Risa in particular is kind of leading on. Aside from that, I can speak only for myself. That project-based learning is something that I want to continue to talk about and explore with this board and administration.
And I understand that 1 minute is definitely not enough time, but hopefully after this forum that you'll be able to connect with the trustees, do a one-on-one engagement and keep that conversation going. Is there anyone, we have a gentleman right here, baseball cap, that would like to ask a question.
My name is Bruce Johnson. I have 3 sons who graduated from KPS, all went on to college. My reason for being here is I'm doing a little bit of tutoring currently in the elementary schools. My wife is also an elementary school teacher. As you are certainly aware, and probably most people here, there's a new 3rd grade reading law that takes effect next year. My question is, do you have any kind of numbers on how many kids are going to be impacted at a negative level from that who aren't going to be able to move on to the 4th grade? My tutoring in there are a number of kids who, in my wife's class, 40% of the kids are not able to read at 2nd grade. So I just want to know if you have a plan for that, if you're even aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Gershak, you can start us off. Let me take it over here. It's whatever.
So the 3rd grade reading thing is a catastrophe, right? I mean, that law is just wrong. We're very much aware of it. I know that the district is sending out letters and continually trying to communicate with parents whose children are being, who are struggling. The raw numbers that you were talking about are probably pretty close. I don't know the exact raw numbers in terms of the percentage, but a lot of our third graders are, up against it. And, so our best effort right now is we're trying to communicate to the parents, to work with the parents, and to prop up these young people as best as we can in the classrooms and through the summer. We really have to address the summer slide thing as we go. So that's what we're trying to do. Ultimately, what we want to do is reverse that law.
I would just say that right now, on May 9th, at the Board of Education meeting, Cindy Miller, our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, they're going to do a great presentation. We're not assuming too much ahead of time as to numbers, concrete numbers. What we're doing now is we are doing independent, very deep-seated assessments of different children or different children's reading abilities and figuring out what they need to bring them up. There's a huge effort in every elementary school in the district that the teachers are making individual efforts to assess these students' reading ability and what can be done to encourage that. And as the law says, if you're making steady progress, there is a caveat there. But the law is way too complicated, and the program that we're instigating, which is being given at this moment in our schools, I don't have enough time to explain it all, but we're right on top of it, and we want to use it as a motivator for two reasons.
Thank you. All right, Trustee Martin.
I don't think that I have anything real new to add. I appreciate that Patty mentioned that this new law should be seen as a motivator. We can get rid of the law, but that doesn't eliminate the problem. I'm looking forward to the May 9th meeting and learning more.
And I just want to make clear that folks that are asking questions, if your question is answered, that means that your question is answered. If you are not clear, you are welcome to ask for a clarifying question. To ask that question, this is what that two-way communication is for. So if your question wasn't quite answered, you're able to ask a clarifying question.
Hi, my name is Dawn Wright, and I am a KPS parent and former employee. One of my biggest concerns about KPS right now is not only behavior in the schools, but also relationship building. In my experience, we've seen an escalation of behaviors due to a lack of relationship building. I don't place blame on teachers. Teachers are doing everything they can. Support staff is doing everything they can. But over the last 10 years, as a district, we've put so much focus on academic data that I feel like many of the resources and focus has been pulled away from soft skills and social skills. As a school board, as we're facing potentially new leadership in the district, I would like to know how committed you guys are to reevaluating things like early elementary homework, which from my experience is taxing, overwhelming, and causing anxiety for young children. Additional recess time, if it's supervised by teachers, it still counts as academic instruction, and it's a great opportunity to teach social skills and build community within your classroom. And lowering class sizes, even by 2 or 3 students per class, would allow teachers much more room to get to know their students and to help facilitate relationship building within classrooms. And I urge you as a board to look at some of these issues, because the distraction of behaviors in the building is taking away from academic instruction.
So I'd like to direct that. I'd like to hear a different perspective, new perspective from new elected trustee Moore.
I agree with all of those points and more. Social emotional learning is something that is increasingly important. It's not just about. Sometimes when we talk about relationship building and doing these things with our kids, it kind of comes off as this, I want to say soft, but it's less of a priority than academics for a lot of people. But these skills are the very skills that employers are looking for. That's what they need and want from our graduates right now. And we really, really need to focus on just that, relationship building, collaboration, problem solving, conflict resolution. That's something that I will continue to push for. And I don't think that it's that anyone on our board is necessarily opposed, but we need to work together to make this happen.
Trustee Schulberg?
I totally agree. Having spent 35 years in a classroom myself, classrooms are built almost 100% on relationships, and good and bad or whatever. You know, it's a personality game. So I totally agree with you. A lot of your question has to do with coin, and it's not all about money, but it is about money. When you reduce a class size by 2 or 3 from whatever, the cost of a teacher to us is what, $50,000 to $75,000. And so, I mean, I hear you, class size. I was a negotiator on the other side when I taught. I understand class size. It's a tricky game because of the money. The soft skills you speak about, we're really in a dilemma. And I'm not walking away from this as far as a board. We're in the thick of it. But our nation is in as far as civility and whatever. Classroom behavior and those kinds of things to replicate other situations. We are encouraging, you know, PD is a negotiated issue. You know, teachers' times, they have after school things they have to do. They have families, they have whatever. So we have to respect that too. Very complicated topic, but I support all those things that you're saying. Thank you.
Mr. Gershon? Thank you.
I really don't know what else I can add to that, because I think Tandy and Patty kind of covered it. I have been a proponent for trying to do soft skills since I came onto the board. You know, so I work in the professional world. I hire people, and what I'm interested in isn't necessarily whether they can do math and those types of hard skills. I want to know if they're going to show up on time. I want to know if they understand what a hard day's work really looks like. I want to know if they know how to communicate, if they can resolve conflict. You know, these are the skills that really lead to success in life. Not whether or not you got a B on your midterm or your algebra test, right? So, you know, I'm completely in agreement with this. And as a board, we just had a bit of a priority setting session, and we identified soft skills as something that we want to do moving forward in terms of prioritizing classroom time.
Thank you. Any other audience members like to ask a question? We have one over here.
Charles Gander,
This,
I do have a couple questions, if I may. One, of the 27 schools in our district, how many special education teachers serve there? Number one. Number two, as far as the graduation rates, how can we be sure that they're not attributed to the just increases in population?
Okay. All right. Trustee Schulberg, would you like to start us off?
I would.
Are you anxious?
I am. I have to say, I'm just going to take 2 seconds. I believe in every one of your children. I believe in what I'm doing. I love this district. It's got warts and got things to do, but it's an incredible district. But that's my enthusiasm. I just wanted to explain why I'm half out of my chair. We have a woman in the room who can give us the stats you want on special ed. Ricky Saunders is here, and she is amazing at the stats. We have adequate, now, I want to tell you, I'm trying to see you, sir, I'm trying to be polite, is that the state of Michigan underfunds us by at least 40% of what's mandated by law. So we take that out of the general fund to make sure that that population is served adequately. Okay, so that gives you that one. And as far as population, actually, sir, I'm sorry, but the population of Michigan is declining, and we have increased the enrollment by 2,400 kids in KPS in the last 10 years, while the population of the state of Michigan is declining.
Thank you, Trustee Schulberg. I just want to clarify, Mr. Hannon, did Trustee Schulberg answer your question? I believe you asked how many special ed teachers were in the district. Yes.
And she said that there was a person in the room that can answer this question.
Okay.
And real quick on the graduation rates, it's a percentage, so it doesn't change. I mean, I appreciate that our number of our students have gone up, but that doesn't drive up the percentage rate of graduates. It actually kind of makes it harder when you think about it. There's more kids in the system. So our rates are up, and it's kind of independent of the number of students in the system because it's a percentage.
All right, thank you. Before we go, we have Brian, and then we have Marcus that'd like to ask a question over here too.
The statistics is a question.
No, that,
I can do that after.
we will leave that for after the forum.
Yes, thank
That will be something that Mr. Haneke asks afterwards. Thank you. And I keep the questions going.
Okay, so understanding, by the way, my name's Brianne Fonville, and understanding that you guys don't know all the specifics and details of every system, I'm just looking to get your views and perspectives and understanding on a couple things. So my question is, what is your knowledge and understanding of the school-to-prison pipeline? And how do you see this manifest itself in Kalamazoo? And finally, would you be open to conducting a policy revision specific to analyzing the ways that indicators of the school-to-prison pipeline might be present in KPS policies? Just so you're aware, there are organizations available that I've recently learned about that are willing to, that already work with boards to do this work, and I'm wondering if that's something you'd be open to.
Trustee Gershak, can you start us off?
So my understanding of the school to prison pipeline, right? So I'm coming at this late. I'm a 59-year-old white guy, raised middle class. My understanding of it, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong, is, it's a lot of that stuff that happens culturally in a school. So a young black boy is doing some set of behaviors, a young white boy are doing some sets of behaviors, but our teachers identify the black child and start to manage to that behavior differently, casting aside, and then that just begins a self-reinforcing behavior on both sides, right? So our young men get communicated to very early that they're less than and that they're not going to be successful. So that just continues right on up into the pipeline to where they're 9th and 10th graders and they're seeing no point to school, no point to continuing, and then...
Thank you, Trustee Gershak.
So, all right. Did I do okay? Okay.
Trustee Moore, I'd like you to pick up on that. Trustee Moore, can you pass the mic down? Trustee Scholar-Barber, please, thank you.
All right, what do I know about the pipeline? I think that Ken started us off well. I think that it also has a lot to do with our school environment, beyond the individual bias of our teachers and administrators, which does exist. Let's stop pretending that it doesn't. I think that another factor is also, we just talked about social emotional learning and those soft skills and relationship building. That is becoming more and more absent from our school system. So kids are in an environment where, they're assigned a number, they're walking single file in a line, doors are locked in front of them, doors are locked behind them. That to me is terrifying, personally. I don't speak for the whole board, but I see that as a major contributor. I would love to hear more about the organizations that you're talking about. I am on the policy committee myself, and I would definitely advocate for having a conversation with a group like that.
Thank you. Trustee Scholar-Barber?
Thanks for the question. I really believe, and this goes to a systemic thing larger than the schools, I think it's cradle to prison pipeline. I think there's inequities way before we get to school. Housing, employment, social, it's a huge issue. We've got a very, very epidemic of inequities. And it's not about equality, it's inequities. And so the things that come to us, the disparaging wages that we see, the disparaging housing, those kinds of things. So I would love it to be cradle to prison, as opposed to just, even if we talk to Cradle Kalamazoo, they have incredible statistics about this. So I think it's an awareness. I think that we are trying as hard as we can. Our teachers come from our society. Our teachers come from other places. And so we're not aware of it. There certainly is a everyday effort to make it better or to look at it and to review these policies.
Thank you, Trustee Scholar-Barber.
Can I have to clarify?
Yes.
I'm
just going to buy more time and get some clarity. I wanted to make sure that I got to hear from Trustee Shala-Barber and Trustee Greshik whether or not you'd be willing to participate in a policy revision that's specific to the school-to-prison pipeline, and also if you can add someone, I know we don't have a lot of time, but what are ways that you might see this already being manifested in KPS?
Yes, I have 1 minute, please, Brian.
Yeah, I'd endorse it. I sit on the policy committee, and in fact, I chair the policy committee. So we can certainly begin conversations with different folks to talk about how we can better partner with organizations to address some of these issues. I don't know if this is enough. We're doing cultural training. We're doing some of these things in the schools with our teachers. It's a little bit of a coin thing. It's also a little bit of a negotiating in time, and all these things factor into it. I feel as though the district recognizes this and is trying to take action. It's a big machine. It moves too slowly sometimes, frankly.
The clarification would be, I would love it to be, like I said, I'm a cradle to prison advocate, and so I would love to expand it out. Let's really talk about what's really going on, not just schools. Schools don't magically, and in some part, I think it's a dump on the schools. Society gets a pass for what the injustices that are done before they get to schools. And so we'll say it starts at school, that everything's perfect till we get to school. Well, we know that's not true. We know that's huge inequities that come. That it just isn't. So as far as revisions or whatever, sure, I love the conversations. But I think that the conversation is deeper and wider and needs to be done at many, many, many levels to raise awareness. If we're going to do this, let's do it right. And we all know we need to do this.
I think we have a couple more questions. I know Marcus has been waiting very patiently, and I see you, Shaquita.
Yes, my name is Marcus Johnson, co-founder of Young Kings of Queen. I just want to piggyback because you spoke on something that I wanted to speak on, and you the teacher over there, you spoke on something that I wanted to speak on too. So the classroom numbers and stuff like that, right? And prison school and prison pipeline. Now I have a question to when you all are going to start hiring authentic people who is competent to sit inside the school system to recognize what's really going on. The stuff that you say is coming in from outside, right? When are you going to really, not the police, we tired of the police. You know what I'm saying? We tired of them. When you going to start hiring people like myself that came from the penitentiary system? You feel me? That came from this lifestyle. Because we talk about numbers, let's talk about numbers. Streaming, that's the best numbers you can find in this time because of technology, right? If you look at streaming, number one streaming thing is hip hop. So that's the culture. A lot of people ain't a part of that culture, but they listen to it. You see what I'm saying? They try to imitate it. You see what I'm saying? The movies, the music is imitated of real life. You see what I'm saying? When you gonna start hiring or putting in the real life people to change that? You see what I'm saying?
Okay, Trustee Shala-Barber, like to start us off, please.
Thanks for the question. I think hiring is a little bit of a tricky game because you have to vet people, you have to have credentials, all those kinds of things. But in our mentoring program, which we're really doing a tremendous amount. Now mentoring takes hours, it takes many hours, but we've made a giant stab at it. And matter of fact, a couple of our trustees have gone on record as saying they think that's one of the things that's pushed up our graduation rates. So as far as hiring the authentic people, right now, we can barely afford to hire who we're hiring. But as long as they have credentials and if they have a degree, if they have help, there's parapros, there's all sorts of other things. I would definitely go to our HR department and continually look through and talk to Sheila Dorsey Smith and offer your abilities, offer your attributes, offer what you've got. And I think you'd find probably that it would be a positive result. I think sometimes we assume that we aren't, but we are.
Thank you, Shala-Barber. Trustee Shala-Barber. Trustee Barber, Trustee Moore, Eve. take over?
I haven't been on the board long enough, and I don't have a lot of expertise. I haven't been on the board long enough to really speak to the particular hiring practices. I can tell you that there is a teacher shortage. That's a very real thing. And as far as mentoring, we do have a mentoring program. I would like to see that expanded. I think that, a couple of, I think 20 minutes once a week with some kids at lunch is an awesome thing for people that can put in that time. But there are a lot of people in our community that have more time and more capacity and aren't feeling welcomed necessarily. And I want to look at what we can do to make people feel more welcomed in our school district, regardless of what their history, says about them.
I'm going to give Trustee Gershek an opportunity to answer that, and then you definitely have a clarifying. You want to? Okay.
Can I just say thank you? Because I think you're out there doing the work, aren't you? I mean, honestly, I don't know your organization, and I probably should know, but I can feel the heart, and I can feel the passion for what you're doing, and I think you're doing it right. You're making that difference, and part of what we can do as a school district is empower partnerships, and and giving a space for your voice and voices like yours to come in and be with our young people, perhaps, right? Whether you're formally an employee or not, I don't know that has to be the answer, but your passion just shines through, and I'm sure you're making a difference. I mean, I'm just convinced of it.
And okay, a clarifying question.
I kind of spoke on what I wanted. Like, people just sit inside the school throughout the day because your teacher might not recognize this behavior. You see what I'm saying? But I do. You see what I'm saying? And so your teacher misjudged the behavior. You know what I mean? Now this boy going to juvenile or going wherever, and they didn't have to go that far. You see what I'm saying? Because someone like myself could intervene. You know what I mean?
And this is what we talk about when we talk about the school to prison pipeline, is being able to identify those characteristics to stop that. And I just want to take a moment that these information vendors are here were specifically picked out because we felt as organizers of this forum that they specifically spoke to what we're talking about when we talk about connecting folks and working with folks that have been affected by the school to prison pipeline, because it is real, very real. We have a lot of questions still out here in the audience, and I have quite a few note cards up here. So, in respect of people's time, if you have a question, if it has a little bit of background story, if you can just give us like a quick snippet of that to get to your question, so we'll have more time for questions, that would definitely be appreciated. So, folks that haven't asked questions, we'll get them first. Okay, go ahead.
I get to ask the question.
Yes.
So, how Sea Change got started was we got started by a group of parents that were just tired. Tired of their children being bullied at school, tired of their children being siloed, tired of their children's voices being unheard, tired of their children being misjudged. And these parents, which were us, many of us are in this room, came together and said that we were going to advocate for other parents like us. One of the issues that we kept seeing over and over was when there was an issue with a child at school, a parent then would not understand their child's due process. And also, due process would not be given. And also, parents would never know where to go. They would go to their teacher, no avail, principal, no avail, superintendent, hell no avail, and then you all. They come to you all and try to talk to you, be given 3 minutes, have to give their address, and you all would not give any feedback. We would like to see that change, and we would like to know if you all agree with that. And we'd also like to know how that process could be changed, if at all.
All right, Trustee Garcia, this is fair, son.
So here's the difficult part about having a two-way dialogue at a board meeting, and I'm just going to cut right to it. We don't know enough to have a two-way dialogue with someone at the board meeting. if a parent comes before us with a particular complaint or a particular issue, or whether it's on due process or behavior or anything of that sort, I can't sit there and have a conversation with the parent because I don't know the backstory. I don't know what's been, well, I guess backstory probably covers it. And I'm representing a legal body at this point. I'm not representing me, right? I'm not sitting there saying, this is Ken Greshak and we're having a conversation and you and I can talk about things. I'm representing the school district at that point. So to have that conversation, would be difficult to do. I can tell you that it happens behind the door, right? When the parent comes and they have a dispute of some sort, we're going to Rice, we're getting information, and things happen again behind scenes perhaps, but they happen.
Thank you. We're sharing our microphones here. I'd like to move this on to Trustee Schiller-Barber.
Sure. I very much agree with what Trustee Grayshek said. McKinney Bergen is here, and she can tell us a ton about due process, and she can tell us a ton about communication with parents. Ricky Saunders is here, and she can tell us a ton about communication with parents and making sure that the phone calls are made and letting people know if there's cracks, if there's Trustee Grayshek's, when these people do come before the board. We would be remiss, it's almost illegal to discuss individual student situations on the board floor. So we go back to our experts, and we have an incredible senior staff at KPS who really has a giant heart for these things. So all I can do is say that we are really working on it. We really believe in it. We are doing our utmost. We encourage strong communication, and we believe that we are there to support parents, and no child should be siloed, and no child should be marginalized. The board strongly believes that, and these women are doing a phenomenal job in supporting those values.
Okay, first part of your question, I believe, had to do with how to better inform parents of our policies, our procedures, their rights, how that stuff, all those moving parts. This did come up in our board advance meeting and was identified as a priority, improving our communication channels. We have a website, we need to do a lot of work on that to make sure that people can easily access the information that, that they need to advocate for their kids. I think that I disagree a little bit with Ken on maybe the definition of dialogue. To me, dialogue with the community doesn't mean that we have to have all of the answers all of the time. It means that we're there to listen, we're there to ask follow-up questions of someone that comes to us, and then we can do some investigating or refer them to the appropriate person. That is not something that can necessarily happen during the formal regular board meetings. Just the function of the agenda, but I absolutely think that we need to create more opportunities, maybe another monthly event, where we have a back and forth, a forum, a get together where we can do that.
All right, thank you. Someone has a microphone back there? I know, Katie, I see you have your hand up, so get you back there.
Two quick questions. I'm a Lloyd Norris graduate, and my first question is, while I was a junior and senior, I served on a board called the Student Advisory Council, and there was each board, there was a board at each high school, and I wanted to know if that still existed, because that was kind of a way for us to speak directly to the superintendent about the issues and about our concerns in school. And then my second question is there, if any, discussion about including any cultural curriculum in the schooling? I worked with Children's Defense Fund Freedom Schools for almost 5 years, and one of our focal points was making sure that we had literature where they had children of color in there, where they had children who lived in some of the similar neighborhoods that the children do, where they could identify with the literature. And we saw a huge increase in the reading comprehension skills of those children because we chose those particular materials. And I wanted to know if that was an idea, or if that was something that you guys could work on, is including that cultural curriculum.
All right, Trustee Gresham, can you start us off?
Yes, the Student Advisory Council still exists, as does the Parent Advisory Committee. That still exists too and is quite successful. we have just invested, one of the more recent board meetings, we voted to fund diverse libraries in all of our schools for specifically the point that you're talking to, that our young people need to see literature in their schools that reflect them, right? And the cultures that they're coming from. So yes, as a board, we recognize that as a priority. We're acting to fund it. The teachers have been identifying, the right books and all that kind of stuff. So we're moving in that direction. Are we there yet? No, probably not. Right? There's lots, but there's just not a lot of cultural books out there, honestly. Well, no. Okay.
Okay, there, now.
I try her.
Oops, can I go or not? Okay, what he's saying is that we just had a conference in Kalamazoo 2 summers ago. It was called Mirrors of Me.
Right.
And Dr. Rice is known for saying you can't be what you can't see. You need to see yourselves in the literature. He has done a magnanimous job getting more literature, getting more textbooks. And Cindy Green, the Assistant Superintendent of our Teaching and Learning Services, could go on ad nauseum about how when we do pick curriculum, when we do pick books, when we do pick a new reading series, to make sure it mirrors our student population. So as much as Freedom School is, we are doing this also. What Ken is speaking about, as far as there's not much, we're trying very hard to encourage more vendors. If you look at the stats between the culturally inclusive and the not, we're still on the low end for the culturally inclusive, but they're coming around more and more, and we are buying more and more. We send out over, Cindy, help me, what's the number of books we send out in the summer?
30,000.
30,000 books.
Thank you, Trustee Sheila Barber.
Yeah, the diverse classroom libraries is a big deal. We are putting a lot of money into buying books that are more reflective of our student population. So that is important. I can't speak to the Student Advisory Council, so I won't. But I appreciate the question. I am not on the curriculum committee myself. There are people there that would love to discuss. Cindy Green, I'm just going to call her out because she is right there, and she would love to have a conversation with you on that.
And I want to say I also think it's awesome that administration is here on hand to answer questions as well. Thank you so much for that. Right, I know the time is ticking fast, so everyone's checking their clock. We're at 7:47. So I see Katie, I see you. So we're going to get these questions. So if it's not opposed to folks, can we run over a little bit late?
I can only stay 10 minutes longer.
All right, so we're going to get, so the other two trustees, are you able to stay a little bit longer?
Kind of like with her.
Okay, so we're going to ask as much as we can. Okay, Katie?
Hi. I have 5 children that attend KPS right now. 2 high schoolers, 2 middle schoolers, and an elementary ed. They've all started in kindergarten, so I have a lot to say, and I have a lot that I could say, but I won't. I'm going to boil it down. I've also done a lot of research on the school-to-prison pipeline in grad school, and I know we already talked about that a little bit, but some of the items I wasn't really satisfied about. You talked about cradle to prison pipeline. I actually work in maternal child health, so that's something very near and dear to my heart. Those social determinants are real.
Yeah.
However, the reason that it's called school to prison pipeline is because in reality, the reality is that prison corporations built prison beds based on first grade reading scores. That happened. That's real. There's also mountains and mountains and mountains of data and evidence that you guys can look up, and I would encourage other teachers and educators and administrators to look up, to really do the homework on, because there's a lot of kind of playing to this narrative, this very surface narrative. And my question is, when is it ever okay for a plucky, kind, compassionate 5-year-old to be suspended?
Good question.
All right, Chair Seymour, can you start us off?
Never, just never. It's not ever okay. I really appreciate the question. There is a wealth of data out there on the school conversion pipeline. I think that everybody has a little brochure here with them, and that I think has a link to an article about the issue itself. Excuse me. I also have a problem with kind of trying to shift the blame away. Kids are in our school system, they're in our school buildings, 7 to 8 hours a day. So blaming the problem, blaming this on, what's happening at home, it's just not gonna fly. We have a responsibility as a school system to address this.
If that was meant to, that I was blaming the home.
No.
It wasn't the home, it's the economics, it's the hiring, it's the whatever, it's certainly not the home.
Okay.
We have incredible parents, we have incredible people sending their children to our schools. And so I'll go on to what the question, I'm sorry? Okay, can I keep going? Okay, so I guess what I'd have to say is never, no one, never, ever, ever. But given that situation, or I don't know this situation, but the way you described it, never, ever, ever. They're the dearest things in the world. So, this is a little bit about being up here at 50,000 feet. I'm not a kindergarten teacher, I'm not a building principal. I don't know the specifics to any disciplinary or any social, emotional, or any traumatic experience or any crisis that exists in those levels. But I would answer your question as you put it, that very much never, never, never.
Thank you. Trustee Yurcik?
This is why we have due process and policies, right? Should a 5-year-old or a 5th or a kindergartner ever be suspended? Well, no. But there's whatever could trigger that should also then trigger a means by which that's avoided. Right? So is the answer never? If a 5-year-old brings a gun into a room, would they? I can't imagine that they would. But could it happen? Sure, it could happen. And could a 5-year-old know what it's for? Maybe. So to sit and say that it could never happen is probably bigger than you can reasonably say. Should it ever happen? Heck no, it should never happen. What 5-year-old would? But there's a process by which it happens. And as a board, we create the policies and enforce the policies. And the state sets a lot of guidelines on this stuff that's even beyond our realm because we don't make law.
Thank you. Mr. Cleta? Maria, I see you. I see you, Gwen. I see you, Khalil. Yes, Maria.
I want to make a comment and
okay, can we do our
I'll make it super short,
okay.
I promise. I respectfully agree and disagree with you, Ms. Scholler, with the cradle to pipeline, and I am in complete agreement with school to pipeline. And I say that because at this time, this area, CYF existed at one time, and I attended that school. And I graduated early, and I was in foster care, and I was a juvenile, and I was a teen mom. I now have a 2-parent home. I now have an education, and my kids are struggling at school. So now with those determinants being removed, there is a culture problem within the school. Because when you create schools with the necessities and resources to attend to the problems that are there, they will be answered. When those resources are not there and you do not have, I remember the name of every teacher in my principal to this day because of the environment. And that is most important overall. My question that I have as we were talking about money is when it comes to professional development, I had a chance to actually ask Dr. Rice this at one time, and I'm not even going to comment on his reply, was how do we, when we are removing teachers out of the classroom and we're putting them through professional development training, how are we quantifying that? Where are the outcomes of the money that we're spending on this training as we talk about not being able to downsize classrooms and bring in other teachers? This training, the cultural competency, where is the data coming from of what they're taking back and actually implementing from what they're learning? How do we account for that? That is one of my biggest concerns.
Trustee Gershak, can you start something?
I don't know that I know the answer to that, right? But it's a very reasonable question on how do you quantify behavior change in the classroom, right? I suspect that what happens is that teachers get evaluated on an annual basis, and that's one of the things that they're evaluated on is their classroom management and their cultural awareness and some of the things that they're getting trained on. It's frankly a really good question that I think I want to figure out more on. Cindy Green may well know the answer for that. She's here. And so we can talk after this is done, and Cindy may well be able to give you a better answer than that. But it's how do we quantify our training? Because we are spending money on this. We are spending money.
I'm going to go with, and again, Cindy will have some stats, and Amanda Miller, KEA president, would have some insight into that also. We don't do PDs just because we do PDs. They're decided on by a myriad of things. And Amanda's at the table, Cindy's at the table, Dr. Rice is at the table. As far as quantitative, again, we need the metrics, and Cindy would have those. As a board, we don't deal with a lot of metrics. We ask a lot of questions, and they're brought to us, and we scrutinize, and we look at things. But as far as the quantitative, especially in that area, that's a really tricky area because there's so much personality. And I'm going to go back to what you said. I totally agree with everything you said. I just want the school situation, the cradle situation, to quantify it, push it out a little bit more. But I understand what you said, and I appreciate your comment. And again, to what Trustee Grayshek is saying, that the kind of quantitative numbers, for me to quote metrics, ask me a question, I will get you the metrics. Off the top of my head, I don't have those.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that because I do not know what studies or what metrics we're using to measure the efficacy of any of the professional development, but I will definitely look into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaquita.
Okay, my turn finally. All right, y'all, I'm Shaquita Lewis. I'm actually the PTO president at Washington Writers Academy. I'm a part of the Parent Advisory Council. So I am familiar with a lot of things that have been talked about. But you got a lot of questions like the prison pipeline and how to, I'm going to tell you exactly how. We have adverse childhood education trauma training that has not been mandated to these teachers. And I want to know why is that we mandate them to go through a training for shootings. Something that very, yeah, they made that mandatory to go through an ALICE training for something that is less likely to happen in our schools, but they will not make it mandatory to go through this trauma-informed training, and they have a master trainer, which is free to them. So I want to know, why is it? Because I make this a point to bring this information to the PAC meetings every month. I stress that this is very important, and it will help a tremendous amount with all of the problems that we have right now that have been voiced today as far as the cultural competence and how to deal with these traumas in these kids, because what y'all looking at is traumatized babies. So how are we going to deal with this? For one, I'm asking, why is it that this trauma-informed training is not mandatory to every person on y'all staff?
Okay. Trustee Moore, can you start us off?
I cannot answer your question as to why it isn't. I agree that it should be. Again, I'm new to the board. We have some other new trustees who have also voiced this, that the ACEs and resilience training should be mandatory for every staff member, not just teachers, but anybody in contact with our children. I know that it is something that is a priority among many in our district and many board members. I can't speak to why or what, whether or not that is something that will happen in the future, but it's something that I would certainly advocate for. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's really important. When you mandate's a really tough word. Mandate's a really tough situation when you're in a contract situation. I do know that we did put more money into getting more, when we had a little bit more money last year in the budget to getting more social workers and things like that. I do know that it's held in high regard by the Kingy Burden and Cindy Miller, and I'm sure that the wheels are working. And again, with Amanda Miller, the KDA president, that working on this as far as it should be done, and I know the principal of your school has really advocates for it and would really like it. So nobody's walking away from it. The where and the how and the when, I think, are fuzzy. But again, at the board level, I would need the advice of Nakinge Bergen and Cindy Miller as far as what's bubbling up through there.
Can I ask, have either of you guys went through the trainings? Have you not went through the training?
I've gone through ACES training, but I haven't gone through anything else.
I'm fairly confident it's a budget thing. We have 800 teachers, and I mean, because the board endorses this, and I know that the administration endorses the ACES training. It's appreciate that KPS is a very large organization, and to do something on a macro level, on a building by building by building, system by system level, is just an enormous undertaking. And like I said earlier, it's a big machine, and sometimes it turns too slowly, I'll grant you. But we are pushing in that direction. It is just a heart moment for all of us, and we're on board with it. And I don't know that it's really free to us just because we might have a staff person who can do it. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So these last two questions is going to close out tonight in 30-second response and respect everybody's time. So Khalil, you ask your question, and the trustees will have 30 seconds to respond to the last two questions.
Hello, I'm Khalil Mazi, president of the Black Student Union, chemical engineering student, high school dropout. And I also lead a mentoring program at Kalamazoo Central, as well as tutor in math and sciences at Kalamazoo Central and Lennox. I often see many students who are between 16 and 17 years old that can't read or do their math, and these are not kids that are sent to me from any sort of special program. They're in your normal classrooms. So first, I would like to know how you all are going about dealing with that. From there, though, also within the next 10 years, 50% of the jobs will not exist in America, as my teacher Santiago said. And my next question then is, every time you talk about education, you talk about preparing students for jobs, but how are you preparing them to change their lives or transform their lives outside of the working experience, which is what education truly is? Other than that, I only got enough time. So.
Yes. Trustee Gershak, can you start us off, please?
30 seconds, go. Honestly, the core thing there is that our students need to come out with the ability to learn, right? Because that's our shifting economy. Is the world really going to have 50% less jobs in X amount of years, or are those jobs just going to be different? Are we going to be replaced by robots, or are we going to be working side by side with robots, which include a different type of skill set? So, to your point about the kids who aren't learning how to read and write by the time they're 16 and 17, that's the tragedy, right? That needs to get addressed, and it needs to be, looked at and understood. I'm done.
Okay. All right, 30 seconds. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for what you're doing for everybody at Kalamazoo Central. I'm sure you are a fabulous role model, and I really, from the bottom of my heart, really am pleased that you're doing this. I do think my heart breaks when you tell me about children, the ages you're saying that are still struggling, and that will be addressed. And Cindy Green, who's sitting behind you, I'm sure is taking notes on that. That's one. Preparing them for the future, we are doing our level best to get them graduated so that they can take all the myriad of problems, the programs with the promise from. We just had a major thing with the carpenters just in Wayland that the promise can do. We've got respiratory therapy, KVCC. If we can get them through, and that's what KILP is about, Kalamazoo Innovative Learning Program, it's about getting them to the promise.
Yeah, thanks for the question. None of us up here are curriculum experts, so I cannot answer to specifically what we are going to do to address these 16, 17-year-olds who cannot read, who cannot perform at grade level. As far as preparing them for the future, to me, that is something where, again, social emotional learning comes in and project-based learning. Project-based learning being a way to get kids excited and nurture that like natural innate curiosity and be adaptive, right? So that is something that I am really excited about and something that I hope to see kind of be integrated into Kalamazoo classrooms more.
All right, and we're going to leave the last question to a woman that wears many hats in this community. Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
My name is Gwendolyn Hooker. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Justice Against Bullying at School. And of course, no surprise, my question has to do with bullying. For a state and federally mandate that says that all school districts are zero tolerance bully zones, what is it that you're doing to actually implement that instead of anecdotally saying that that is the law? That's one. And two, is there anything in the works to actually implement restorative justice practices across the board at all of the schools for every student, every time? And that's it.
All right, Trustee Moore.
As far as the zero tolerance bullying policy, I take that to understand we do not tolerate bullying. I want to separate that from zero tolerance as in, you know, a child is found to have bullied and is immediately kicked out of school. That's not the zero tolerance policy that I'm for. As far as restorative practices that I know of, there is currently no plan to expand the restorative justice, restorative practices programs that we have at KPS. It's something that I would like to see. I think that it's something a lot of us would. It's expensive, but I think that there are ways around it, ways that we can teach ourselves to practice those, you know, beyond the formal setting that we are using now, which is a little bit limited.
Thank you, Trustee Moore. And with that, oh my goodness. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I got the look of death. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, you had your 30 seconds.
Having been in a lot of classrooms, and just this past week, I've been in 4 different ones, micro level. There are many teachers, there are many buildings. Be kind, share, all those things. I was in Washington Writers Academy's PEAK program, and that thing was just all about non-bullying, or the soft skills, the social emotional learning about bullying. Bullying is something that we have got to work on. We do have that policy. We are working on it. Restorative justice has been around since I've been on the board, but different teachers use it in different way. As far as a blanket policy throughout the system.
Yes. All right, I know many questions were not asked, and I know there are quite a few that have more questions to ask. If your question was not asked, you were on an index card, believe me, I will hold on to them. You can still submit your question to 6black@yahoo.com. If you have a question card in your hand, you can bring these up here. So I'm asking the trustees right now, so if we gather these questions for you, present them to you, possibly at the next school board meeting, is this something that you will be able to follow up with? If there's names attached to these?
Speaking as a board president, I can't speak for the whole. I can't speak for the whole board. That would be something that would be brought up for the whole board to decide. It is a team. It's a team of people, and so I would have to take that to all my board members and see what they would want to do with that. And so, and I will be sure to get back to you on it. I don't want to make an overarching promise things that I have no jurisdiction to promise on. And so, Robert's Rules of Orders and that whole institution of the board meeting, I need to respect that, and I also need to respect my whole board as far as their opinions on things. So I never speak for the whole board. I can only speak for myself.
So, can I just thank you all for coming? Yeah, really. I think this is really what it's all about. And I appreciate you being here, and hopefully you got something out of it. I, for one, would love to see the questions that weren't asked. I mean, I can't promise you that I'm going to be able to answer 60 questions, really, really well. But I'd like to know what the questions are, because I'd like to know what you're all thinking. Yeah, so let me tell you a story. I've been on the board for almost 5 years. Do you know how many emails I've gotten from parents? 5. Maybe a handful even, all right? I'm sure it's more than 5, but probably less than 10.
So, you know, it interests me that here I am on the school board and I don't get a lot of reach from my parents and from my folk. So, you know, this type of thing for me is really, really beneficial. And I apologize if, you know, given the time limits that we weren't able to get into the details of some of your questions. But I didn't want to leave here without thanking you, because a room full of people on an open dialogue like this, you know, hey, it's all right.
Thank you. Trustee Moore, did you have anything you want to add?
Similar to what Patty said, I can't speak for the board or what we would do at, you know, in any official capacity where the questions presented to us at a board meeting. But I can say all of our email addresses are here. You guys send me these questions. I can answer them to the best of my ability. I don't have all the answers, but I'll certainly try and love to have a conversation.
Before you folks leave, before the trustees leave, in respect to your time, I want to thank you for coming out. This is the first of something like this. Not knowing what was going to happen this evening, we do have a follow-up event to this, so you all invited, and trustees, you are invited as well. I don't know if it'll be you three. Hopefully it'll be 3 different trustees. But we have another venue set for May 13th. It's going to be at Allen Chapel AME Church. It's going to be at 6 o'clock. So this will be a continuation or a transformation of what's going on. So everyone in this room right now, there are surveys. Please, please, we would like for you to fill those surveys out, because that's how these things are going to evolve. Write your questions down. Actually, the silhouettes over here that have trustee contact information. So, as Trustee Gershak was saying earlier, that he has rarely gotten any correspondence. Please send him communication. Let him know what you're thinking. Give him some praise.
And here are my cards, and I get 3 to 5 emails a week from folk. And so here's all my information up here, and I would love, I won't know the answers, but I sure can get you to the right people and make sure that you get the answers that you're looking for. Well, that's part of our job as a board, is to help navigate the KPS system and get you to the experts. And so I'm leaving my cards here. You're more than, I'm ready, willing, and able to talk to anybody for as long. Like I said, I get probably 4 calls a week, 4 to 6 calls, and I get 3 to 5 emails a week. So I'm happy to help you out with that. And thank you for your time. Thank you, thank you.
All right,
and thank you, McKingay, Bergen, and Cindy Miller, and Ricky Saunders for coming. Thank you so much.
All right, and thank you all. You're more than welcome to stay, network, speak with the information vendors.